Welcome to the Mindfulness of Singing, and I'm Denise, your sassy, spunky scientist.
And I'm Tony, your bubbly, big-hearted flower child.
Our podcast features practical tips and tools for a journey of transformation using the healing power of your voice.
Each podcast, we will delve into the mind, body, and spirit connection by interviewing inspirational guests, sharing personal stories, and discussing the most recent scientific research.
Tune in and join our community of mindful singers.
Good morning. Morning glory. It's
Good
Monday
morning.
morning.
You what?
I said it's Monday morning.
Good morning, sunshine. And it is New Year's. I mean, the new year has started. It's early in the year. And I love this time of year because to me, it is like a clean slate, a fresh start. And so today's topic is about, for me, is setting intentions. And we both listened to something on NPR, and we'll share that with our guests later after we talk about it a bit. But tell me what you thought, Denise. Did you like it?
Oh, I listen to Hidden Brain all the time. I love it. And I love that they weave stories with human behavior. It's one of my favorite, podcasts. And, I'm a podcast
Junkie?
I dig them. But anyway, mostly because I can listen to them no matter what I'm doing, and I can multitask because I need to be able to multitask if I'm going to get anything done. But I love it because it is the way I started my 2020. And I know that so many people lost jobs and lost family and all of that. And I've been incredibly, incredibly fortunate not to have had that happen. And that I've still received a paycheck and all of the things, right? And so when I say this, I don't mean to be glib, but because of some of the things that I started 2020 doing, 2020 has been a pretty stellar year for me.
Good for you.
And part of it is because I started in 2020 stacking some habits. And so when she said that, I was like, yes, sister, amen, bring it. Yeah. I started brushing my teeth. I have a Quip toothbrush. I love my Quip toothbrush, but it does 2 minutes. And so every time I brush my teeth during the day, and because we're home, I could brush my teeth more often than I would if I was at work, right? I would do squats while brushing my teeth. And then about, 6, 7 weeks later, I went, my pants fit different. Let me look at this. And I looked at it and went, damn. So sorry out there, folks listening. What are you going to do? So, I mean, it's a thing. If you
Absolutely.
and so not just that. I mean, that's pretty superficial, and I realize how silly I sound, but I do. But when you decide to not, one of the things I don't like about New Year's Eve or New Year's resolutions is I'm going to not do this. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to stop this. What if you made it a year that of the things that you do, like you make up your mind, I'm going to add this, I'm going to do this, rather than I'm going to get skinny, I'm going to stop eating, or I'm going to stop being lazy and I'm going to go exercise. I mean, to start those kinds of the year with those negativity kinds of things, I think totally set us up for failure.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I liked in this story talks about just what you were saying, that when you're trying to add a habit, you need to make it unconscious because you're going to brush your teeth. So it just became an automatic program. And when you're trying to break a habit, you need to make it conscious. For example, in the Hidden Brain episode, they talk about people at the movie theater who eat popcorn every time they go to the theater. They fed people stale popcorn. They didn't even like the popcorn. They said afterwards, yeah, it really tasted bad. But the habit was to eat the popcorn when they were at the theater. The next group, they made them switch their hand and eat with their non-dominant hand to be more mindful of their eating, and they stopped. So the idea being, if you want to add a habit, make it so predictable, like brushing your teeth. And when you want to stop one, be sure you add mindfulness. So I was thinking, well, how can hopefully our listeners are singers, some of them. And how can we add some singing goals and better goals than, well, I'm going to sing better this year. I'm going to practice more, whatever. So if you need to practice more, where are you going to program that in your day that it's such a habit like brushing your teeth? Like I'm going to drive, maybe this isn't a good example in COVID, but if you have a room, you have to go, we have a time, and that's all that's allocated, better chance instead of I'll do it when I get around to it, because we know how much we do the things we're going to do when we get around to it. And if you want to stop, maybe you're a singer who has a tick and you're always twitching your hand. Are you going to do something different with that hand to make it more conscious, more mindful? So I hope all our listeners have set some really smart goals. And as I was listening, I thought of a couple of stories I'd love to share, and I want to pick your brain to share your stories too, Denise. Mine are not
Mm.
about mine are not about my ass, but
Well, I was going to say, I think I told my story. It was about my ass. Tell your
but
story.
mine is there were two things that I really liked about it. It's the myth that willpower is the thing that makes habits
Hmm.
change. The quote is, it's
Yep.
not the sustaining force. Like you're not a great unicorn if you have success because you've got all this willpower. It's setting up the right
That's
parameters.
right.
And a part of that willpower also, it's not willpower, is accountability. And I thought about this story that for years, anybody who knows me knows I love Italy. And I had gone to Italy a few times. And then there were decades when I didn't go. But every year I had an intention. I would say, voglio andare a Italia quest'estate. I would say it over. Here's my intention. I'm going this year. And it never happened. Well, I was asked to speak at a big convention where there were thousands of people. I'm not exaggerating. It was a packed conference in Las Vegas where um, Dr. Roizen and who's the other big doctor, Dr. Oz, were speaking. I was not speaking with them, but I was a little bitty part. But I was on stage in front of
Still,
still.
still.
So it was a big honor, and I was
Hmm.
thrilled. And I was telling about what was happening in my life, and at the end, in front of thousands of people, and I said to the CEO of the company, "And I'll see you in Milan." And I just, that was like throwing the gauntlet down because I'd been wanting to go all these decades. I did not have a penny to go to Italy. I didn't know how for decades I would ever get there. And because I had
This was the
put it,
first time you went?
no, I went
Okay.
when I was in college.
Oh, okay.
And another time when I was in Prague, I had a ticket and I was supposed to come back home, but I didn't come back home because I wanted to get to Italy again.
Hmm.
And then waited decades because of life and things happening. But
Yeah, I see. Okay.
the point is, all those years I had set an intention, but it wasn't until I made myself so utterly accountable and said it in front of people who knew me that I had to figure out a way. I started another job, sold things, and I went. And the rest is history because after that year, every other year I went, and I should have been living there now if life circumstances, what had happened in the world. So I
Yeah, but
guess
you
for
were meant to
me,
write a book.
yeah, I guess for me, accountability is such an important part. If you don't have an accountability buddy, you're missing out. Denise and I are going to have a planning meeting this week for setting our goals and intentions for the year. So to think that I wanting it is not enough. Having a plan, having the habits, either the habits that you're going to set up to break in a certain way or the habits that you're going to add in a certain way will get you started on those. And so we would love to hear from our listeners about your goals and intentions and the success that you've had this year, especially singing things that you've changed by incorporating more mindfulness. And we're going to share some of those too, because we've got some things in the works as well.
Yeah. Two things though, I want to say.
Go for it.
I say this all the time. Time management is one of the hardest things for young singers. Time management. Time management is something you have to really work with. Uh, let a teacher or a mentor help you with it. Put your practice time in your calendar, in your schedule, or it won't happen. You can have the best intention and if you are like me, like I was in college, I hated to go to the practice room. I loved to practice. I wanted to do it in my own home, but I had neighbors and stuff, but I hated going to the practice room. I loathed it. Uh, there was always tons of interruptions. People were always looking in the window, blah, 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 blah. People don't have what I call practice room manners. It sucks. But, but, uh, I finally got to where I made myself a little sign and put it on the window that said, practicing, do not disturb, so people would know not to mess with me. But anyway, if you're one of those people, or if you're a person who loves to perform but you hate the practicing, one of the things that you can do that will change your mindset and change the way that you do is do fist pumps. Yes. And this is what I do for exercise, people, because other than the squats, I hate to exercise. It sucks. And we're getting ready to have a guest about exercise.
You've told me that, not with our guest here. I'm glad you.
Okay. Well, I'll probably tell them too, because
I
I detest
keep it
it.
real.
I detest it, but I do like to go to the gym. But mostly because then I can go to the sauna and I can go to the massage table. But the action of working out, I don't like it. I think of all the hundreds of things I could be doing besides that. So it's not because I loathe. I'm not a lazy person, but man, do I just loathe taking the time out to do it, right? It's just, ugh. But anyway, because you got to drive there, you got to change clothes, all the stuff that goes with that. But doing some fist pumps when you don't like something. So I'm not a morning person, and I've tried to get up earlier, a little earlier every day. Not ever going to get up at 5 a.m. like my friend Tony Crowder, but I, but I do know that I could get more done in my day if I just get up a little bit earlier. So I hate it. One of the things I do is I sit up on the edge of the bed and go, yes, I'm getting up early. And that, believe it or not, releases some endorphins and some hormones that makes you feel good about it. It will then eventually make you feel like you want to do it. The other thing is that podcast talked about friction, and I loved that, because when you make things, so friction is when you make something harder on yourself. So if you have a habit that you want to get rid of, not only do you need to be conscious of it, but if you make it to where there's a lot of friction around it, you're less likely to do it. So, for instance, for me, I do not buy ice cream or sweets, and there is no white sugar in my house. None, zero. It doesn't come in here. And that's because if it were here, we would be eating it, right? Like, Don would eat it. And Denise would probably bake or whatever, because I want to please my people in my house and they like sweet things. So I would probably be like, well, okay, I can make some cookies. But if I don't have the ingredients in the house and I can't make it, then it doesn't get made. And when people come to see me, if they know me well, they know to bring wine, not sweets. I'm just saying, because
Duly noted. Yeah,
I'm a firm believer that you try to, if there's a habit that or something that you don't need in your life, make it really hard to do the thing. So I love chocolate cake and ice cream, but that is only on my birthday. It's not something that comes in the house. So I'm a firm believer of looking at your habits, looking at the things that you feel hold you back, and then say, how can I make this harder for me to do? So plan to go to the practice room between two classes, even if it's just for 15 minutes. And do the one song that you don't like that's hard. Do that in those 15 minutes.
Right. And how many times have you drug yourself to the practice room, and then once you got there, you're so glad? I mean, for me and for most people, the number of times that you're glad you came far outweighs the time. If it's the first few minutes, like I always say about running, the first few minutes of running are the worst. And then once you get in the groove, you're going or you set the goal that I'm just going to do 15 minutes. And then if you have that extra, how many times do you not just do 15 minutes? Because you're having fun. I mean, you should be. Yeah. That's the whole point of the process. So
yes, absolutely.
So hopefully we've inspired some people to check out this. I've loved Hidden Brain too for years. They were popular before podcasts or even a thing, just listening on NPR. But it's January the 3rd. And I don't remember, I think it's something habit. But if you look on January the 3rd, Hidden Brain 2020, you'll be able to pull up that podcast and get some tips.
And then listen to it only after you've listened to ours.
Absolutely. Hey, that's a great idea for programming your habits. Well, hey, Denise, let me tell you about our upcoming guest, because I think
I'm excited.
Me too. I'm glad you said now that you don't like to exercise, because our first in this dynamic duo, and they're called the Musical Athlete. You can find them on the.musical.athlete.com. And first we have Chris Kelly. Chris is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, a functional range conditioning specialist, a neurokinetic therapy practitioner, and has done extensive coursework through the Postural Restoration Institute. He specializes in working with professional athletes and performers to optimize individual biomechanics, alignment, and core strength. As a former college athlete, he suffered traumatic injury. Chris's career was saved through a better understanding of his own body and moving properly. He is passionate about helping clients learn about their bodies and the way they move to eliminate injury and improve performance. So that's our first guest. And the other half of our dynamic duo is Stephanie McKranie. And Stephanie has an extensive background in the arts, from performing on stage to teaching and working in arts administration. Recently, Stephanie was in Opera Tampa's Carmen and in the world premiere of Love vs. Death as Elena Hoyo. Stephanie has performed with many companies, including the Dallas Opera, Opera Colorado, Opera Tampa, St. Pete Opera, Space Coast Symphony Orchestra, Opera del Sol, and Central Florida Vocal Arts. Stephanie currently performs with the acclaimed classical crossover group Classica, which recently went on tour to South Africa. Ms. McKranie had the privilege of serving on faculty at Texas A&M University Commerce, University of the Incarnate Word, and University of Tampa. Stephanie currently has her own voice studio and is an active soloist. In addition to a bachelor's of music education from Stetson University, Ms. McKranie has a master's in vocal performance from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. So we all three have our master's in vocal performance from the University in Texas. So how about that?
Wow.
Go Mustangs. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Very good.
Yeah, because Mustangs is a lot better name than horn frogs.
We're horn frogs.
What kind of peyote were they having that day when they said, I know, a good mascot, horn frogs? Not so much.
Well, welcome, Chris. I was just reading your bio a minute ago. So now we have both of the dynamic team of the.musical.athlete.com joining us today, and we're really pleased to have you both here.
And it makes so much sense, because when she was reading your bio, Chris, I was like, what did this guy do? Like reach in a jar and pick out a piece of paper that said work with singers. And he went, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
and then when she started reading yours, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. His other is a singer, and she's like, you're gonna do this, whether you like it.
And then what I was gonna say, and then this beautiful woman comes along, and so it's
clearly,
it
makes so much sense now.
Destiny.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We and that's exactly how it happened too, because like we randomly met at a Halloween party, and so I mean it was at complete random. And I remember the first time we ran into one another, she was talking about, the fact that she was a singer. And I mean, I thought that was super cool. Obviously, I mean, she's a professional opera singer. That's amazing. And then I was like, oh yeah, I play the jazz trumpet, which like I did as a kid, but it's been a while, but I mean, I was looking for something to talk about. So I was like, yeah, and I do have the trumpet and like mothballs in my closet, and I could potentially play it, but it's been a while, but I just, I wanted to relate. So we've gotten some more common ground since then.
That's beautiful. So how long have you all been a team in the working of your business, not just your personal relationship, but kind of combining what you do?
Well, we've been together a little over a year, but all this whole business thing started last Christmas of 2019. Chris came to hear me sing a Christmas Eve service. And as you ladies know, I was singing Rejoice Greatly. So I know you're familiar with it.
Oh, God.
Let me see. Have I heard of that? Let me see.
Yes,
of course.
A little familiar. And I was nervous because it was the first time he had heard me sing, actually. So afterwards, I just wanted him to say, like, babe, that was beautiful. Great job. And he was like, that was great. you know, you do this weird thing with your rib cage, like when you hit higher notes, and like he didn't know the terminology, but like at the ends of long melismas, like he's like, you do this little thing. And to be honest, and I love you, babe, I was kind of like annoyed, right? Like I'm like, just tell me.
Of course.
I was just thinking, and you're still seeing him. That's great.
You think you are, you little jazz trumpeter. Tell me how to sing.
I'm like, let me sing Rejoice Greatly, you know?
And, you play it on the trumpet.
Right? Speaking of
man.
Chris, but we couldn't, three singers, we couldn't resist on that one. But
I know. Listen, it's
you were doing it for her greater good, and you must have a lot of charm by the way you said it. So go ahead and finish your story. We'll quit attacking you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, he did like compliment Sandwich at first. He said, you know, that was great. I noticed this, but you're still great, you know? But he kind of wanted to work with me in that. And I'll be honest, you know, I have all this training I've taught. I thought, what can he teach me? Like he's not a, you know, a singer, but I know he's a biomechanical expert. So I said, okay. And when the pandemic kind of had this time to work on things. So this beautiful thing actually kind of was born out of the pandemic, to be honest, because we were sitting there and I said, okay, I've worked with all these coaches and all these teachers. Here's two tangible things that I know I have difficulties with. And, you know, I've done all the Alexander technique. I've done Feldenkrais. I've done all these programs, which there's nothing wrong with any of those programs. I've just, you know, I still have things to work on. Right. And I said, let's do like, I'll be your guinea pig, sure. You know, and I gave him two things. And one was my high D, was always been shaky, and like floating high notes, not always consistent. Right. And I said, I'll sing that. We'll do it a couple times. And then you can work with me. If you can help me on those things, then this is a real thing. And that's exactly what happened. I was working my high D. It was not good. I'll be honest. It was not pretty. And my floating high notes are always inconsistent. Chris said, okay, and he can talk more about what he did with me for an hour. We were together for 1 hour in my house during quarantine. And I did it again. Came out. My high D came out consistently every time. I was floating the high notes and I thought, okay, wait, there's something actually here. Remember, because I was annoyed. So I was like, he has to kind of prove it to me that, you know, I know he's not a singer, but he knows the body. And so I said, there's something here, because I've always struggled with this. And he's very specific instead of general, because he's looking at my particular body. And so that's when we started our Instagram account, because we're like, and I'm gonna be honest, I was very nervous because I know singers are, you know, have very, you know, ideas, the bel canto, and we're not going against any of that, but this is a new way to look at the body for singing. And that's when we started our Instagram account. We've grown from there.
Rapidly. I didn't realize it was just that recently. And there's such a trend on.
Well, Kirsten Chambers speaks highly of you. She's a good friend of mine. I've known her for years.
Oh,
that's
wow.
awesome.
Yeah,
we
and
love Kirsten.
she thinks that you guys are great. So
She's a singer at the Met, for our listeners who don't know, and you'll be able to listen to her soon on our podcast as well.
yeah,
But
she and Keith are
They're
on our
wonderful.
podcast as
We're
well.
very thankful to have Kirsten and
Yeah.
Keith Corner.
Yeah, Kirsten's been one of our biggest supporters from like very early on. So super. She's like very consistent with our classes, and she's great. And she's put in the work, you know, and I mean, she's seeing those benefits as well. So they're both great. And I mean, both Kirsten and Keith are like super athletic people anyway. So I think they kind of got it early on, but you know, our goal really is to, and that's kind of been what I've found is that like singers that already have an athletic background, like Isabel Leonard is another one of our clients, and she's one that she's like a former dancer, and you know, she's very athletic just as a human being. So I mean, you know, like when we spoke with her, I mean, she totally understood what we're trying to do. Like my biggest thing is just getting singers to understand that with stuff like this, like it's not even really like there's a difference between fitness and what we're doing. You know, I mean, fitness is a component of improving performance for anything, but then there's also the health component. Okay. Can you get into a position at all? You know, and so for me, when I'm looking at a singer, you know, and I'm assessing somebody, or like I'm watching Stephanie sing, okay, anytime someone takes a breath in and they exhale, okay, the diaphragm has to descend and ascend in order to do that, okay, because when you're talking about, and with singers, it's funny, I was thinking about this, it's like with athletes, they develop their lower body athletically. Like that is the thing that really is like I'm a soccer player, I was a college soccer player, I work with a lot of pro soccer players, and that's kind of like that's their thing, is they have to develop rapid and good control of their lower body. With a singer, it's the opposite. Their airway is their athletic mechanism. Like that's the thing that develops most importantly with as a singer. And so in order to really, sing well, and I'm not speaking about vocal technique or anything else, but you have to be able to change the shape of the airway. Okay. As you inhale, the airway expands. As you exhale, it compresses. As you inhale, the rib cage expands. As you exhale, it compresses. The pelvis does the same thing. If there's a limitation somewhere in those structures and you can't do that, then your body is going to try to substitute a compensatory action to get there. And so that's what we saw. And when I was looking at Stephanie all of those months ago now, that's what was happening, is because Stephanie couldn't access that note because she couldn't compress enough to hit that note well. Instead, she had to arch her back, or she had to assume this kind of like weird position. Or it's the same thing that you see for those people that do work out. It's like someone that squats down with a weight that's too heavy. They can get the weight back up, but they have to use their back, or they have to contort their body to get it up instead of using their muscles. It's the same thing with the singer. And so what our process is just optimizing the body's ability to compress and expand everywhere. The airway, the rib cage, the upper dorsal rostral thorax in the back here, the pelvis, and give them the ability then to, when they do go sing and when they inevitably kind of hit all of these ranges and have to access all of these weird positions with their diaphragm, they're able to do that, and they're starting from a good place. So a lot of the work that we did with Stephanie initially is just getting her to be able to take a full breath in. So it's like kind of starting from neutral as opposed to starting from a position, in her case, where she can't really fill the backside of her rib cage as much as we want her to. But hopefully that's our process. That's kind of how we start with a singer, is kind of understanding that, like, do they have the full capability to take a breath in? Because if you don't, you're going to start from a position that is suboptimal, and you're going to make certain compensations around that to get that note. But from a vocal health perspective, that's not the best thing for you. And also from a performance perspective, that's going to limit you later in a performance, or later in an audition, when you're tired, you're not able to compensate as well anymore, and that's when pain is going to start to manifest, and that's when you're not going to be at your best. That's when you're going to start to see detriments in performance. And by kind of warming up in the right way, by using some of the things that we teach people, that's what we're looking to extend out. It's really the longevity factor as well as the health factor afterwards, the recoverability and everything else. So kind of back to what I was saying earlier, like, yes, I want my vocalist to be able to, perform and get stronger and all that stuff, but it starts with just the ability to take a full breath in and the ability to recover, because that is the most important thing. That was long, but hopefully that gave you good information.
It was good, and it was long, but it was really
Yes.
good. I was with you all the way, and I have trouble staying in there. So if I could stay with you, then our listeners will be able to stay with you. Yeah, that's
Fantastic.
great.
Yeah.
Chris, so I have a question for you. What do you think about breathing through the nose during athletic movement as opposed to the mouth?
Well, that's a good question. It really just depends on the task that you're talking about. So nasal breathing is aerobic breathing. All right. So when I'm breathing through my nose, what that's going to do is slow down the breath. Okay. It's going to make things slower, and it's going to cause it's going to cause a delay of air getting into my body. All right. And when you're talking about the aerobic system, the aerobic system is long duration. I don't want to call it slow task, but long duration, sort of our it's the thing that powers us through life. And so I would say that, and what I want for all my athletes, not just my singers, but when I'm talking about athletic movement, I want my human to be as aerobic as possible for as long as possible. Okay. So what I believe is that I prefer nasal breathing up to the aerobic threshold. So I want you to be able to go hard and breathe through your nose. Now, there will be times when you break into a maximal sprint, or you're working as hard as you can, you have to breathe through your mouth, because that's unsustainable. You're not going to be able to do it for very long. But you notice when you start to pant through your mouth, that's when your body starts to become anaerobic, and that's when again your fatigue system starts to set in, because the aerobic system is recoverable. Okay, we can keep going with it. Okay, and that's the goal. Whereas when I start to breathe through my mouth, that's when I have to slow down, because I can only sustain that for a very short period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tony and I are both really big into various kinds of breath work, and we've
Uh-huh.
read a ton of books on breath. And one
Great.
of the books I love the most is Patrick McEwen's
Breathe.
Oxygen Advantage. Yeah, now
Yeah.
Breathe is
Oxygen. Yeah.
Nestor,
Actually, I'm sorry.
James Nestor.
That's James
Yeah,
Nestor. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oxygen
yes.
Advantage is one of my favorite books. Yeah, it's fantastic.
One of my favorite books, and it, Stephanie, you might be able to relate to this, but it made me realize that we teach singers. I've totally redone all of the breathing that I teach my kids, my singers.
Mm-hmm.
I teach at a university, so we do a few minutes of breath work before
That's
every voice
awesome.
lesson, and then we begin to sing. And when they first start learning a piece, I make them do every breath through the nose, because I fully believe this. And if you don't believe me and you're listening and you're a voice teacher at a university, fight me, because I'm telling you,
Yeah.
we teach every singer. I will totally fight you. We'll go out in the yard and scrap, because I believe we totally teach singers to overbreathe. And when we
Yes.
do this, they experience anxiety. Then they have all this compensatory stuff that goes on because they can't sustain that over breath for very long. And then
Absolutely.
they fight their own breath for their
Yeah.
entire careers. And they can't figure out why people talk about breath being so important. And yet they're 35, 40 years old, and they're still going, I cannot seem to get this breath to work. And it's because
Yeah.
you've been taught incorrectly. It's
Mhm.
Yeah.
not right. You cannot over breathe and sustain that in rejoice.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's
Thank you.
I think you're absolutely right. And so, and it's funny because like when I read the Oxygen Advantage, I was like, yes. I mean, and you look at all of the things that it talks about vertical facial growth, and all of these things that, and really when you're talking about vertical facial growth and mouth breathing, what happens is when we breathe through our mouth, the jaw retrudes. Okay. So the jaw stays slightly behind the maxilla, and that anteriorly tilts the face. And what that causes is we're not able to get air into our upper back. As a result, we're not able to reciprocate, and we're not able to shape change. And when you look at, and so for me, it's like with breathing, you've got two sides of breathing. You have the biomechanical side, which is like the movement of the diaphragm and the ability to get everything in the right place. And then you have the gas exchange side, which is the rate of breathing, carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide or oxygen utilization by the blood, that kind of thing. So when you're talking about this over breathing, on the biomechanical side of things as well, if you have a singer that has a big arch in their back, okay, they're unable to take a full breath in. From my perspective, what I see is that their center of gravity is forward, okay? Their weight is in their toes, okay? They're unable to fill their backside with air because they're unable to truly take a deep breath in. And you're absolutely right. They're over breathing. And then what that over breathing tends to do is it just keeps pushing them forward and pushing them forward and pushing them forward. And it keeps upregulating their sympathetic nervous system, because the sympathetic nervous system is the product of the inhale. And the more somebody inhales, the more the more tensed up they become, and it's a vicious cycle that feeds itself. And so I think that one of the things that we do with our singers is that we have them do nasal breathing while doing aerobic cardio. Okay, that's like a big thing for us. Is that so? If you know the Oxygen Advantage, the BOLT score, like we use the BOLT score as one of our KPIs for our singers. Okay. And like, I'm talking, we're beta testing our musical athlete program right now. And we have high level singers in this program. And I had a singer that started
Sign
with
me
a
up.
4.
Yeah.
But we had a singer that started with a 4. Okay. And so for those of you that are not familiar with BOLT, it's blood oxygen utilization or blood oxygen level test. And it's basically it's a test for how well your body utilizes oxygen, but how well your body tolerates carbon dioxide. And I mean, for her, it's like, if you can't do that, okay, if your body utilizes oxygen poorly, then your recoverability as a singer, your breath management, all of those things are going to be detrimentally affected. And so as a singer, in my mind, that has to be something that is addressed first. Okay, you've got to address the ability to utilize oxygen. that is like thing one, and so that's why with singers, like I feel like take the barbell off your back, okay, stop deadlifting, stop doing these things that are creating more compression in your body, and make sure that you are an oxygen machine, okay? Make sure that you're extremely aerobically fit, because singing requires that. Make sure and then we can get into things where you're developing different levels of tension, and we're working on all of this fitness stuff. But the aerobic side of things is incredibly important, and that's why with our singers, like we begin with that. And we also begin with position, getting their bodies in the right place so their bodies can utilize that oxygen everywhere, so they can expand and compress like an accordion, for lack of a better term. So I think that it's incredibly important. And I love that you guys are incorporating that. That's the first time I've heard that utilized in a university setting. So my hats are off to you. That's fantastic.
I take all my students bolt score.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
great.
it.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have young singers that are 20 years old whose bolt score will be 8. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
Well, I
Oh my-
mean, the lady we were talking about that the bolt score for, she's a professional singer. She's out singing in the world. And so this is
right.
something that it's not being addressed and I absolutely love this conversation. I love that we're all doing this. And kind of to Chris's point, when we were first discussing this, he works with professional athletes. And he said, this is how professional athletes train. Why are professional singers not training the same way? And I didn't have an answer, except for I said, I don't think they know.
No, because they're not taught anything like that.
I wasn't taught it, and
No.
I had no idea. And so that's what we said, well, I guess we have to create it. And I have so much gratitude towards Chris, because he's kind of delved into this whole world and is creating it for the singer. And obviously you all are doing the same. And I said, just because we
awesome.
don't, we didn't know.
Yeah. It's funny because when I read that book, I read it in like, I don't know, 2 days, maybe. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh my Lord. So I reached out to him. I wrote him an email and said, Dr. McKeown, can you tell me if you've ever had an opera singer walk through your door, and if you think this would work for highly athletic opera singers, classical singers, jazz singers, whatever, any kind of singer? And he wrote me back within a couple of days. I was surprised.
Yeah.
He's a really approachable guy. And he wrote me back and said, yeah, I've worked with a lot of singers, and singers, he said, singers should have a bolt score of at least 30, if not 40. And he said, and they should never wake up with a dry mouth. Singers of all people should be taping their mouth at night shut. And, and he gave me all these things about that. And I'm really grateful to the fact that he answered my question, because I just had this sinking suspicion that if singers were turned on to breathing through the nose more often, putting yourself in aerobic situation, breathing through the nose, doing breath work through the nose, all of those things, and building up your CO2 tolerance, that it would change you as a singer. And that definitely has helped me, for sure. Tony, you were going to say something?
I don't remember now. There were so many good things.
Knocked it out of
so
your
many
head.
good
I'm
things.
sorry.
But
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, okay. So what are you about to do? Chris?
Chris,
I
can't sit still. Chris.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just.
No,
No,
what are you about to do? What are you
You're
about
going
to
to show
do?
us something. You're going to.
Oh, no. I was just resting my hands on the TRX.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
He
I
can't
thought
sit
maybe-
still. I'm used to it.
We were getting ready for a demonstration or something.
Yeah,
Well,
I was like,
while you're-
okay,
while you-
he's going to sing and work out. That's awesome.
Oh,
Well,
no. I'm just chilling out. So.
Our goal this year is for him to start singing as well. Do you know Andrew
Yeah.
Bird wrote The Singing Athlete?
Yes.
Yes. So he wants to do a little collaboration with us and help teach Chris to sing, because Chris has never been a singer. So that for him to learn that next component.
well.
But you
Yeah.
have a very resonant speaking voice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Well, we're still trying to come up with a song, but Andrew wrote The Singing Athlete, and Andrew's brilliant, and another foundational read, I think, for singers, because he just covers so many topics. And he's such a brilliant guy. And, I just reached out to him because I was like, look, we have a lot in common. I'd love to collaborate with you and just talk shop. And super genuine guy. Like, we spent like an hour on Zoom just talking about stuff. And he's like, hey, why don't we, why don't we just do some stuff together? He's like, I'll teach you to sing. And he's like, look at my body. Tell me, help me figure some stuff out. And I was like, man, I mean, number one, pressure, but because my girlfriend is a professional opera singer, but beyond that, we're still trying to figure out something to sing, and I'm going back and forth between like my '90s, like
No.
my love of '90s like grunge, and then like actually real music. So Stephanie and I are kind of going back and forth. This is like an ongoing conversation. She'll like be like, well, what about this? And I'm like, what about these three things? She's like, no. So we're still going back and forth on that, but I'll keep everybody updated. We'll definitely post a video of it and lose several hundred followers. So we'll work on it.
That's funny.
No, you won't. Come
No,
on.
you won't. But I did think of what I was going to say. We just posted today an interview with Iris Gorin in Tel Aviv, and she wrote a book called the
Singer's Body.
The Singing Body, and talking about the body. In our book, we talk about the body as the instrument. I'm a certified yoga voice teacher. There's definitely using yoga poses in the studio. So we're all on the same page that singing is not just your larynx, it's your full body. And we're so delighted that you guys are on that same page too. And we're starting a revolution in the singing community to create more mindful singers. So I guess we probably should start wrapping it up. So I want to ask Stephanie how you actually work together. Do you book your lessons separately? How, if people want to work with you, how do they connect, and what's your protocol?
Sure. Well, you can reach out to us via our Instagram is probably the easiest way. We do individual. We have a 30-minute free consultation with Chris. So you can just reach out to us and he will do a one-on-one free consultation and look at your body, do an assessment, and he can actually do a one-on-one, write a program for you. We have several different things. One of them is we could write a warm-up for you. So something that you do every day when you get up in the morning, you can warm up your body before you sing, before you have an audition, before you have anything, because we know this, we vocally warm up, but we don't always warm up our body. And we know it's like one of the most important things. So you can definitely just reach out to us and schedule a free 30-minute consultation, and Chris can kind of walk you through and then see what would be the best program for you in that way. We are also launching coming up soon a mentorship and a membership. So our mentorship is going to be a 3-month program where you're going to get individual like fitness training. You're going to get an educational component. Chris is going to present something every week, and it's a whole program. Chris can talk more on that. But that's going to be amazing for the singer and also really for voice teachers as well. So you're going to learn how to do these programs for yourself, but also how to see it in your students. And then our membership is going to be basically same thing, the program, education, a Slack channel to be part of the musical athlete community. So we have multiple different ways to be involved, and you depending on your availability, your price point. So really just reach out to us on Instagram and we can kind of put you in the right track.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
But yeah. I guess, and a little bit more about our mentorship. So for us, again, I work with, in my gym here in Lakeland, I work with people that are post-surgery as well as professional athletes of all sports, and with singers as well. And so we've adapted our process to singers, but the process of understanding the biomechanics of the body and the idea of understanding the concepts of compression and expansion and how those things fit into, a warm-up for singer as well as preparation for the body, and how as a teacher, because when I'm working with like a singer and they're singing, I'm watching them move. And when I see something that when they're not able to access a node, or they're not able to, their breath management is off, or they feel off, I'm going to watch their body move. And okay, and if I see that, there's something wrong, then I'm going to break that down. I'm going to do a quick assessment. I'll give them a few drills to kind of restore biomechanically what that person needs. And then I'm going to put them right back into their activity. So, and retest, can they do better now? And so that eye for assessment, as well as that evaluation process, is something that I believe would be extremely useful to vocal teachers. So that's one of the big things that we cover in our mentorship, as well as for singers that just want to self-assess as well, and so, understanding your body, I believe, is the most important thing that anybody can do. It precedes almost everything else with regard to training or fitness. And so to give that to somebody, I think is, invaluable. And it's something that, we're extremely excited to launch, because it's, it's kind of all of the, it's all the concepts that I've learned for years, applied to singers. And it's super cool because there's so much to learn in this, in this world. And I'm so, thankful for the people that have been supportive of the work that we're doing. But that'll launch probably sometime mid-February. We also have a fitness program that's associated with that. So coaches learn by, or coaches, I say singing coaches and vocal coaches will learn by doing as well. So they'll go through this program themselves. They'll go through the warm-ups. They'll notice changes in their own voices, and we kind of take them through the process of how we work with somebody. So super excited to launch that, and get connect with more great people.
We're actually announcing both those programs on our Instagram today, that will
Yeah.
detail both the
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Super
Well, that's
excited,
great.
yeah.
By the time this airs, that will have already happened, but people will still be able to go and find out about the program. And I'm assuming maybe that they can't, is there a program that they can jump into no matter when it has started, or?
Yes. There's
Okay.
we have things available. We work with people, kind of on a rolling basis with
Okay,
regard
great.
to,
That's great.
in different ways. So absolutely, like we're going to have a fixed start for our group program, but I do some consulting for people individually. I also work, individually with a ton of singers. So absolutely.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
And we
Denise,
help do, I'm sorry,
that's all right.
Go ahead,
we help
Stephanie.
do programs on a quarterly basis too. So if they miss
Okay.
this quarter, then our plan, is to do it, the mentorship, every quarter. So if we don't
Great.
get this one, then we'll do it again.
Right.
Great. That's great.
Right.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for being on today. Wow, that's a lot of information and a lot of really great stuff to think about. And I'm so grateful every time we have a Zoom call and we meet people who think outside of the box about voice like Tony and I do. I'm so grateful that we're not the only people out there.
No, I
We
love.
each other.
And
Yeah.
I have to
No.
say, Chris, I totally set you up, because when I asked what you thought about breathing through the nose, I was worried that you were going to say, oh no, always through the mouth. Everything should be through the mouth, because there are a lot of athletes that believe that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's something that, I mean, it's certainly in the fitness world as well. I mean, that's something that is only slowly changing, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what I think from a training perspective as well, because I came up as, an athlete. I mean, I learned
Sure.
to bench and curl on my dad's weight bench at 13, I mean, I came up training hard, but really when it comes down to it as an athlete, it's not about how hard you train. It's about getting a specific result, and it's about understanding what you're not able to do. And so, and in a lot of cases, and I can kind of wrap up with this, but what I see with people, singers that train, I tell singers all the time, like, you're a professional athlete, like what you do to your body matters. I mean, it might feel good, but what are you actually doing? I mean, it's, so there's a lot of things, like a singer that I work with, a singer right now that loves to power lift, and she loves to bench press and back squat and do all of these things. And she's like, that stuff is great to make her strong, and she makes her look great. But at the same time, what it's created is a ton of compression that has made her worse. Actually, it's made her less able to take a breath in. It's not given her access to the backside of her body. And we've had to do a lot of work and make a lot of changes to her training in order to get that stuff back. And so what I'm saying is, I believe that type of thing is, I love people that train hard, and I want them to, but breathing through your nose is a great indication that your body is accepting of what you're doing. Okay. I mean, bottom line, if I can do an exercise and breathe through my nose and perform it well, chances are my nervous system is in tune with that activity. So I know that I can get stronger in a way that's going to jive with my breathing. Okay. Whereas if I breathe through my mouth and I'm just pushing through things all the time, I'm creating more compression and I'm kind of squishing everything together. So then I reduce my ability to expand again. So I absolutely believe that nasal breathing almost in every situation is crucial. So I think that, the whole thing with, taping your mouth and that whole process, I believe every singer should go through that, because it's that last 1%. I mean, it's the thing that separates you, because there are so many people that are gifted, but it's the thing that separates you from the rest of everybody else. It's your oxygen advantage, and I think that that's something that is tremendously important, and I love that you guys are, doing what you're doing. So I'm glad that, I'll message you about that offline. We definitely have that in common, and I'd love to, hear more about what you're doing with your students. I think that's amazing.
Mhm. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again so much for trying to help us as singers of any kind, right? Any
Mhm.
genre, not just classical, but jazz singer, pop singer, country singer, whatever. Uh, accept and learn that their body is their instrument and that it needs to be highly trained, just like all singers are a form of an athlete. And thanks for what you bring to that. And we are excited to send people your way.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys having us on here. Thank you so much. Our first podcast of the new year.
Hey, that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. We are very grateful that you joined us today.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe, write a review, share it with a friend.